Hey, welcome to another edition of The Growth Engine with Ryan and Trice, brought to you by Healthy Brands. Ryan, what's going on, buddy?
What's going on with you? We're back.
That's right.
We're,
We took a
we're
little break, and now we're back at it.
yeah, we're back at it. The sun's shining, spring's here, and we're energized. We're ready to go, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like every day is this weather is just. We were just talking about it. Like every day, I'm like, I just want to go enjoy the weather. This is great. So I've been missing it for sure.
Yeah, I want to go outside, get some sun, and work on an outdoor project, do some landscaping. I want to be out from away from the computer, right? Like
Right.
it's that time of year, but we have to stick to it.
Right.
We gotta make money, right?
That's right. All the business owners out there know exactly what we're talking about because every day they're like, man, I do love the spring, but I got to go to work today. I got to make it happen. So,
Yeah, especially all those construction, businesses, people in
yeah,
home services businesses. Like, oh man, they see the sunshine. They're like, oh, please give me a day off right now, right?
yeah,
But
exactly.
this is when you make the money.
This is when they make their money.
It's on. It's ready. It's go time, right? It's ready
Absolutely.
to get after it.
I've already had somebody in the neighborhood get a driveway port. So I'm like,
Oh,
wow, they're in it already. It's on. Like,
it
so,
is.
yep,
It is. It's go time. They make all their money in the spring and in the fall before winter hits, right?
absolutely.
And try to squeeze in a vacation or two right there in July if they get lucky.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you've got an
Uh,
interesting topic today because I think this is something that we all business owners, all of us as C-suite type of people, like everybody in the world, I think that works is sort of a process in which you do things and defining that and understanding that and all those kinds of things. And I think tell us a little bit about what you're thinking about today with the topic.
yeah. So early on in the foundation work that I do with businesses, one of the first things we do is often one-on-one with the CEO, actually, on a whiteboard. It's an exercise we do where I do this thing where I hand them a Sharpie and I say, hey, I need you to illustrate for me, like, what is it you do here? Like, what do you got? What do you got here? Like, what have you built? Where are we at with this? Can you illustrate this for me? And, and they usually look stunned. They're like, what do you mean? Where do I start? And I'm like, okay, how do you do what you do? Let's
Yeah.
start. And they usually start doing a bullet point list of, well, we do this and we do this. And I go up with an eraser and I erase it. I'm like, no, that's the services and products you have. Like, that's not,
Right.
let's talk about this. Like, I want to know what it is that you do and how I want to draw a line. How do you do it from the time you get work and go deliver it? Like, can you show me what you have here? What are the departments? What are the people? Like, can you illustrate your business? And I try to keep it generic as possible because I want them to, I want to see through their eyes the way they see their business, right?
Right.
I want to see what they have here. And oftentimes what we end up with on the board looks like a preschooler got a hold of an etch a sketch. and they would start drawing stuff out and they're like, no, that's not true. And then they erase it or exit out. And well, then we do this and then we draw it over here. And then customers sometimes want this and it goes to this department. I mean, this thing looks crazy when it's done. And I do this on purpose. It's a lot of fun. And we back off from it. And I look at them and I'm usually like, this is what you built. We have a good laugh.
Well, and I think for so many people, like the process through which they got to the place of saying this is what we do probably looked exactly like that. They're like, oh, well, we started off with this core idea, we're gonna do this. But we realized as we got to know customers that or our customers let us know, well, they also wanted us to do that, but they wanted us to do it a different way. Or they wanted us to do that and they also wanted us to do this. And so now we're like figuring out how to do these things. And that's what ends up happening is it's like, and it's not always this organized process of we go through this and then we offer them this and then we offer them this, or it's usually I exactly do the drawing board like, well, we have this and then now we also do this over here, but we don't do this other thing that is common for other people and we don't do it for a reason. Like there's a methodology to it, but the only reason The only person that really understands the methodology is usually the business owner, because they were there from the beginning, getting it from A to B.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting.
Well, as things have evolved in their business, this is a lot of times when I come in, like this is the first time they're really popping their head up and looking around and going, oh, shit, look at this mess. And what they draw on this board in front of me is that mess, right? And
Yeah.
in their
Yeah.
head, that's what they're feeling and seeing. And it's like, it feels awful. Like it feels unorganized and it's chaos. And they've already thrown up the flag usually, and that's why I'm there. But what we have here is the before picture of the before and after that we're going to create. And this is kind of the fun part about what the topic is today, which is the advantage of having a core process. And I'll define that in a minute. Go ahead. You had a thought.
I was gonna say, this is, it's funny, as a marketer, a lot of times you would think, I don't care about this. Like I process, and I don't need like I have a marketing process, or I have marketing processes for each of these things we might do as part of our strategy. But the truth is, often the chaos that you're talking about with companies is felt organizationally. And the reason is they're not really doing a very good job of explaining to the customer what it is they do from the customer's perspective, not the products and services, but what's the problem of yours that we solve, and all the things that we do to help you solve that problem. Because that being organized is is a downstream application of your core process because you've defined it. You've defined all the stuff we talked about before in other shows, who you are and what you do. And now and your products and services and who your customers are. And now you're like, how we help you is defined, and the process through which we do it. And if you, just to your point, like if you're drawing it like a crazy squiggle on a board, I hate to tell you, but your culture feels that.
Yeah,
100% they feel it. Yeah,
they absolutely do. And so, sometimes the worse that squiggly is, the better it is for me, actually. And because I know we can unravel it. I know that we can make this make sense. And I know when we can, the sooner we can, the quicker we can get to like solving real problems and creating some peace of mind for not just him or her, the owner, but like their whole team, right? And so here's my definition of a core process. There can be a lot of processes, right, in a business to run the business, and there should be. Right. But there can only be one core process. And so a core process, it's a process plus a diagram to illustrate that process on how you deliver your products and or services to your customers. It's that simple. It's an overview. It's got steps in it. It's not complex. It's not this isn't a highly detailed process. Yeah. It's a bird's eye view. It's 20% of the 100%, because the detail is best left in individual processes, but it's the steps that you can quickly explain to a customer or an employee, of what you have here. What are you doing here? What do you guys do? Right. And having that illustration is good, because some people can read a process, but boy, most people really like to scan or they like a visual. It kind of lays it out. Right. Yep. So from the time that you get a customer to the time they get your products or services, and maybe even a little bit further than that, after that, how that relationship continues, and how do you set this thing up to work? Yeah. This is really the essence of the title of our show, the growth engine.
Yes.
The core process is your growth engine. This is where it starts. It's the engine itself, and the piece that you put in place, and you start building on it and improving it to make it the fastest growth engine you can build.
Yeah. If you can't define it, you cannot grow it. So you're either in your definition process, you're either defining your go-to-market strategy, right? Basically what we're talking about. And the process through which you do that. And you're either nailing it perfect and you got it really well thought out, which helps everybody understand at all these steps, there are opportunities to grow by doing something better or reaching somebody new, or, going to market in some different way, or geography, or whatever, right? Those are all opportunities if you look at them as such. How can we take it from what it is to what we want it to be? That's growth, right? But the second part of it is, if you define it and it's badly defined, and there are gaps, well, guess what? There's a whole bunch of growth in those gaps. Almost always, 100% of the time, there's something in there that you're like, hey man, if we just did this, we could reach geography, people better, whatever. You know what I mean? It's right there. And when I 100%, when I go in and I talk to somebody as a CEO or leadership team and say, let me understand the full gamut from operationally and leadership to sales and marketing to customers, what comes out of it is, I'm going to help draw this picture and also see the gaps and see the opportunities. And that's where the growth comes in. So it's not hard. It's just a matter of, do you have a critical eye for looking at it in this way? Because if you don't, and you can't define it to what you're going to outline for people, then you're not on the growth path. You haven't put the pieces together yet, and that's okay. That's what we're here for, to help you do that and figure that out.
And that's, I wonder, how can you work on something? How can you, as a team, how can you work on something and build something or make something better if you can't even see it? You can't even explaining it's one thing, but you can't even see it. It's not a tangible thing. And so that's why I love this piece of it. And I hate the word process, because I never think it does what it's supposed to do. This is this growth engine, right? That you have to improve to make it better and better, to stay above your competition, to make life easier for you and the leadership team and everybody that works there. It has to be smooth, right? You need to be able to get in and drive that growth engine every day and not have it break down. So it should be a constant, process in, in work. Like, you're constantly improving this thing always. And so I wrote down like some of the reasons why I think it's important to do this. And that might help explain a little bit more the core process and why we need to go after it and do it.
Okay. Great.
So it's important. Number one, to clearly communicate what you do. Okay. Number one, clearly communicate what you do. Okay. So usually the answer was, when a CEO gets asked, like, or an owner, what does your company do? It's usually like one or two words. We do lawn care. We do plumbing. It's like, we do B2B sales. And so it's very generic, right?
Right.
Industry, but they really don't understand what they do differently. So when they say it, they actually discredit themselves. And so their engine is usually built to go somewhere with certain passengers, right?
Right.
And so describing those passengers and where you take them on that journey is really a better answer than saying we do lawn care. We do lawn care and landscaping for multi-residential unit,
Right.
something. And we think we do it better than the others because, our goal or our mission is to hear that from the residents themselves. And so we actually record that and keep track of how many compliments we get from each of our customers. And like those types of things, like, really separate and differentiate as you move forward.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as you're saying it. I was like, it's really about your mission, and being able to define who you are and what your mission is the first step in defining how you're going to do it, because you're setting up what is it we do? Why is it important to the customer? And how are we going to be different than anybody else? And just if your mission is, to provide the best lawn care service, in Kansas City, Missouri. Okay. That's a little generic, but who's going to tell you you're not, if your goal is to strive to be the best at something? And you might say, okay, well, how are you doing that? And how are you measuring that? But the key is still, you have a mission. You can say what it is you do, what it is your goal is, and how you're going to help people. Well, you're going to provide them the best lawn care in Kansas City, Missouri. Okay, great. Cool. Yeah. It's a little generic, but still, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's a starting point.
Yeah. I think like if you think of growth engines, you would build different types of engines, depending on what the need is. So, if you're doing drag racing, you're going to have a badass, engine, right? If you're looking for fuel efficiency to get you farther over a longer period of time, right? Like, there's a different engine. There are different engines for different purposes, and your company has a purpose. And defining that piece of is what you're talking about, Trice, which I wholeheartedly agree that we typically will do that as a next step, because we need to find out, what does our engine need to do? What does it need to accomplish? And then our story about what we do and how we do it is richer. It gets better buy-in.
For sure. For sure. Yep.
Yep. The next thing I put down was it helps identify strengths and weaknesses. You said a little bit about this earlier. Like when you start putting down the different steps that you do to deliver the products or services, first of all, first time you take a stab at it, you put like 10 things on the board or less, usually 5 to 10, and you're sitting and you're like, okay, we got a lot of holes to fill in here, man. There's a lot of steps here we're skipping. And so it's almost like the business owner isn't giving as much credit to these individual steps. And he's probably even got people in these roles that are doing the things in between those steps. And he's not even putting that much attention towards that, which is interesting, because oftentimes that's where the weaknesses are happening in this engine that they're building. Not that the person, it's that there hasn't been enough attention to that thing, that role, those tasks, those details that make that engine really take off.
Yeah, because often you think about like in serving customers in some way, your process is XYZ. You forget like, well, hiring is a part of that process, and sales is a part of that process. It's not just find customers, serve them in some excellent way, and repeat. It's not that simple. And because there are a lot of other things that go into it. And so when we talk about a core process, we're talking about defining who you are, defining your customer base, defining what it is you go to market with, the whole gamut. Because the better you are at defining all those things and how each of your, departments, and if you're a small company, you might be all those departments, frankly, if you're the CEO or the owner of the company. But how each of those areas serves the ultimate goal of serving customers.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking back, I had this customer a while back. This customer, we had the leadership team all in the workshop, and we were creating their core process. This whole workshop is just doing that. And when we took our first stab at it, I backed away from it and I asked everybody, take a look at this core process and tell me what seems like really dramatically off to them. And as they were looking at it, like they were looking at, do we have all the pieces? And they did have the main pieces put into this diagram that we were drawing on the board. But this was a commercial building company, and there was 4 steps to this process we drew out on the board, and one of the steps was the actual building process. So there was kind of like the sales process, right? The onboarding of the customer. And then there was like this building. And then it's like, okay, here's all the things we do when we're complete. And out of those 4 components, the building phase had the fewest amount of steps in it. If you know anything about commercial building, like it's like 95% the build process, right? And I started laughing. I'm like, no wonder we're feeling so chaotic right now, because each project is custom and we don't have any written processes, and we don't really have these steps identified and articulated. We're just flying by the seat of our pants, really. That's the part where they all just went, oh no. And they really kind of realized what the issues they were having were all back to this issue of we sell this thing, building and construction, and we go through the motions, but we really haven't stopped to identify what success looks like in that phase. And so the rest of the time we were together, and we extended actually into a second time frame for our second leadership workshop to finish it out. We just ran out of time because we realized how important The phase that we didn't get detailed enough needed to be built out and have a full attention with everybody on board, ready to roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting because we both have experience in this category of commercial building in some way, shape, or form. And it is an incredibly layered, complex process from bidding, before even bidding the job, but bidding the job, project management of multiple phases of that, materials, delivery, actual work. I mean, there's tons of stuff in there. So that's interesting that once they realized that became such a huge focus in flushing that out so that they could understand in that phase, we actually really do have an articulated process that we want to go through to make it easy for new people when they come in or customers. It's easy for us to articulate, this is how we do it. And there's a reason why we do it this way. And maybe that leads to competitive advantage. Often that's where competitive advantage comes from, is right there. I think if anybody listens to this show and thinks about this topic and is thinking it's boring, this is the heart of it. Is if you can define these things, you can align your competitive advantage. You can figure out what it is and you can maximize it. And that's part of the growth engine, frankly, for a lot of people, is understanding. That's the first thing typically, right? Is, hey, what do we do well? Now let's do that. Let's amplify that. Let's market that.
Yeah. And what you just said is dead on. This is what's crazy about this situation.
Yeah.
They're known for doing this. Like, they're good at it. Like, all their people are competent. They're good.
They just started. They're like legit.
They've been doing it for years. They really know what they're doing, and they have their reputation for knowing what they're doing. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, document that recipe so you can keep repeating that. So you keep baking that cake. So you've got to keep that up. And the bigger you grow, and the farther you put off doing that documentation and getting those processes really nailed down and understood, communicated, that's going to hurt you as you grow. You won't be able to maintain quality. And I think that a lot of people, they ask me this, like, how do I maintain quality as I grow? Bingo. Yeah. This is it.
Yeah, exactly right.
This is number one.
Yeah. I was going to say my example, and I don't want to rabbit hole this too much, but is exactly that. I worked in a multi-location commercial business. And so now you're like, hey, we're really good at this. How do we stay good at this as we expand locations, physical geography, different people? How do we keep a process and replicate in a way that is easy for other people in other parts of the country to utilize and build their business on? And it's incredibly difficult especially where you have things like this, right? Where you have people with certain skill sets who might be really good or pretty good, right? Those are different categories of people. And that in and of itself right there is going to impact things. And but if you don't have a core process to help understand how to utilize your team and how your team performs well, like what ideally is their situation, well, then you make it harder on yourself, and it's really hard to identify where your opportunities can be for certain kinds of people and things like that. So, or different kinds of work. Frankly, hey, we might be really good at commercial building in a different category. Healthcare is completely different than education. They have different codes. There's a lot of different things in there. And if you have a lot of people with expertise in one, your core process doesn't necessarily have to change, but you can align it to different skill sets of different people. And like, hey, I got a bunch of people that are really good in the educational sector because they really understand the differences there. Cool. Go after those kinds of jobs then. And just use your core process in a way that allows you to define your people and the work you want to do based on that. So right there's a great opportunity just as a learning of how do you keep this going? How do you make it work to keep growth moving, just like you talked about?
Yeah. I think people don't understand those details, Trice. I don't think they put these pieces together. I think they see things we talk about a lot of times on this show. Like we talk about culture, core values, missions, these processes. Like we talk about these details, right? I don't think they understand how to use those things and how they are applicable to becoming a part of their growth engine. I would say when you fully understand how they all connect together like a piece of puzzle, right? And where each one of these things is a piece of your growth engine, right? And you put it together, how this thing just completely adds rocket fuel to your business and just takes off. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the exciting part. It isn't, I do enjoy building the pieces step by step with business owners, right?
Yep.
I much more enjoy what happens after that engine's built for the first time
Yes.
and watching it improve and grow. And it usually takes off out the front door so fast for these companies. And this is like, they could be 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old, 20-year-old company, right? And they do these things and all of a sudden, like they've never seen it before, they have to hold on and it just shoots right out of the gate. I mean, it takes off.
I've seen it happen exactly that way. And going through the process of defining a lot of these things seems really tedious. I know the idea of it, right? But the truth of the matter is just having an opportunity to really think about it, really talk about it, really internalize it as a leadership team and as an extended team, it revitalizes who you are as a company and the enthusiasm with which people will go after things. And it just changes your culture because you are just clearly defined, which is really, it's the whole point. And so it allows people to understand where they can maneuver and what they can do and how they relate to this bigger organization and this bigger company and its mission and what that means to them. It just it allows people to just really flourish, I think.
I like what you just said about it. So they can look at that when they're even first coming into the company, and they can see this illustration and as a part of orientation and onboarding, they say, hey, this is the whole thing. If you see another piece of this machine that you want to work on and you've been in the company and you've got the knowledge or the drive or want, man, just tell us. Like we'll shift. We'll shift. We don't want you to be bored on this. We want you to love the company, be passionate about what we're doing, our mission and everything else. I don't care what part of the engine you work on, to be honest, as long as you love doing it and you want to be here and those things. And I do see people stay in companies longer that do this well. And they give people other opportunities to learn, because that's one thing we've learned about, our younger generations, that they get impatient, very fast. They don't like to stay in one spot very, very long. They want to keep learning. They're smart. They learn it. Then they tackle it, and they don't go into this cycle like our parents did, where they do the same thing for 30 years. No. Like they want to shift and move. So I love the idea that they can see visually this machine and then go, oh, I might want to do that and that. And then lean in a little bit and learn a little bit more about it before they even jump to that position.
Yeah, not to keep going down this hole, but I think companies right now in this time period where so many people are changing jobs and things like that, is you hear often, I wasn't being challenged. I've learned everything I can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is a bunch of people in an organization who didn't ask, what do you really want to do? Do you feel like you've gotten everything out of it that you can? On the flip side of this, I've had this conversation with young people recently who are looking for insight or, advice and mentorship, and say, I think I should be leaving my company to go try something else. And my answer to them, or my question to them always is, do you feel like you've learned everything you can learn? Because if you haven't,
stay put.
There's an argument for not doing that, right? Yeah. There's an argument to stay. And it's not about your resume at all. It's about, are you really good at what you do now? Because if you are, and you want to learn something else, tell somebody that. And
it's almost, more times than not in that situation, and it relates to the topic today.
Right.
They did the basics. They learned the basics and felt like they conquered it.
Yep.
They didn't go to the next level of innovating, improving, and showing people what they were really made of. They didn't do it. They're already changing job in their mind. They're already moving on. It's like, wait a minute, you didn't master that. You didn't get good at it. You didn't make a name for yourself in the company on that thing. You just did what the other guy did before you. You're going through the motions. But if it was a sports team, you're going to probably be on the bench because you're looking for playmakers, right? And so if you're not being a playmaker, a game changer playmaker, if you're not making things happen in somebody's company, you're probably not getting considered to move to other positions because you haven't performed in that one yet either.
Yeah.
So
There's so much to be said for somebody coming in as a manager, right? Like as a department lead, somebody coming in and saying to me, I think I've learned all I can learn from this job, from this type of activity, and having some honest reflection on whether or not that's really true, because it might be, it might not be, but either way, it's a great conversation to say, okay, let's see if you really have, or what are the next layers that I, as your leader, have been kind of waiting to try to tackle in that area that I want you to now dive into and learn and lead and grow, because it'll help me as a leader, help us as an organization, help you as a person. And it's an extension of what you've already been doing. Or, you're right. I think you have gotten the most out of this area. And here's where I think you can now be moving toward and learning. And it's another step, which makes you a better person, employable person, and makes you a more well-rounded in whatever department you're in. And I think I'll tell you flat out, as a leader, God, I would really respect somebody a lot if they came in and had a really honest conversation with me like that, because one, it gives me an opportunity to say, here's where I think we should be going with you as a person, and where your skill set can grow. And two, it helps them understand that. And three, it helps me understand this person is probably someone who's evaluating their opportunities. And I have an opportunity to say, we value you, we respect you, you're going to grow here. It's not going to be just about promotions and managing people. It's going to be growing your skill set and, growing your salary because of that. That is frankly incredibly valuable to people. And there still might be a place where you're like, hey, look, I've really outgrown the company and I can't grow laterally anymore. I can't learn more things, whatever. Fine. But if you've had an honest conversation with your mentor, your boss about that, you've flushed out where your opportunities for growth can be. And it does relate exactly to your point with this topic, because all of this reflects in what do we do to help customers. It's not just I want you to get better because I want to, from a marketer standpoint, right? Oh, I want you to be able to do everything we do. Well, that's not possible, right? So that's unrealistic. It's more about within your area of focus, are you getting the most out of all the technology opportunities that are out there that have grown and become developed over the last few years? Do we know everything we need to know about those things? Can we apply them, good or bad? Like before we decide you're right. There are more opportunities out in the free market out there for you than what we have to offer,
Yeah. So I almost, in this conversation, I almost am in the reverse. I'm in the flip side of this. And the reason why I'm in the flip side of this is you're looking at it very much from an employee's view in this. And I'm looking at it very much from a CEO's perspective right now. I'm looking at this going, for the first time ever, I'm seeing this growth engine in front of me. And now matching up this process with my org chart or my accountability chart, right? I'm actually looking at this and I'm looking at my team. We just watched the NCAA, we just watched this, we just watched the basketball, last night. And it's like watching all these team members. Yeah. And you watch how, if I'm putting together that team, I care a lot about getting superstars in every position. And you do have a salary cap. You can't get superstars in every position usually, but you can come close. But I'm in an improvement mode. This is time for everybody to step up their game, because now the employees understand there's this engine. I'm a piece of this. Here's where I fit in, and I have to do my part for the sake of everybody else. And my performance has to be good. This is a performance engine now. It's not just an engine. It goes from the first time we build it may just be an engine. But now I want to build a performance engine because I got to beat competition and I want to be the best at what I do. So now it's about which people in which seats. And now I really need performing people in all positions, on all cylinders. You've heard that. We're on all, we're moving all cylinders here. I want all cylinders firing in this thing. And so now the pressure's on the people to perform that wasn't there before. And so my team needs to be showing me what they got. And because I'm going to look for a replacement if they're not. And so from a CEO standpoint, I'm going to give them love and I'm going to give them opportunity. But this engine, it's going to move with or without you. And I'm going to make sure that happens. Does it make sense? Like
You are looking at
it's both. It is both. It's both
Yeah.
your side and it's both of our angles, right? That's what makes this hard for business owners.
Yeah, it's exceptionally hard for business owners because you're touching on something that's really interesting in that for the let's say, mm, from the 50s to the mid 2010s, it was very much focused exactly the way you're talking about. Free market system. This is capitalist environment. I want the best. I want to do the best I can. I want to grow. I want to beat the competition. I want to dominate. And there are companies out there that have embraced that mentality very aggressively, and that's their culture.
Yes.
And then, but I think that the millennial generation and the younger kids that are behind them are changing that. In that, the companies now are becoming really employee focused, or maybe I'll say it a different way. Employees are expecting companies to become more employee focused and not about this aggressive dominance culture almost, right? And I think that's really interesting because that's where I think it's not that I necessarily operate that way all the time. I don't, but I do when I am talking to an employee, when I'm talking to somebody that's a part of my team, I do talk that way. I'm 100% thinking of it from their perspective, and hell, it helps me, and hell, it helps the company, of course. But
Right.
I'm trying to build them. But you're right. That's not it is the CEO's job in a lot of ways, but it's also not his focus or her focus.
So
Their focus is growth.
right.
And
So let me
that is the mindset.
So let me not back up my comment. Let me go further with it based on what you just said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Old school though is about the business owner, money and greed. If I go back that far, what I'm talking about is where business and the current environment is, that is me focused. Like instead of being all me, right? It's now what my fourth point was. We moved right into my fourth point that I have here.
Cool.
Business owners, leadership, everybody in the company is on the same side of the page on this situation. They're on the same side of the booth, looking at the same problem, and that same problem is improving this growth engine, this core process. Now it doesn't matter what generation you are.
No.
Because now you as the business owner understand this thing has to be good. And the employees or the team is now focused on that thing. It's not about you and your money and greed and growth. And truthfully, if you're a good person, it's not.
Should be.
It's
Right.
about being the best at what we do. And I think all generations actually can get on board with that. And so how is that defined? And I think you can define a lot of those pieces by how good we are building this machine.
Yeah.
And so I like that it's a language that everybody can talk.
Yeah.
So my fourth point was it basically aligns the entire company so that everybody's working on the same thing. This engine, as you described before, actually helps drive you towards your mission, right? Towards your vision, both of those. It gets you to your vision and it's fueled by your mission. and everybody's on board with that.
Yeah.
It's not about you or me. It's not about individuality. It's about what we can do together and how we can make a change for the good, you know?
It is. You're exactly right. And we do, you and I, we talk about this all the time, that if you're clearly defined on those things, your mission, your vision of, your goals, and everyone is in alignment, all teams, all people, growth comes from that. Being well aligned, knowing what your customers want, right? Like that's part of this too, is you have to be able to understand them. So you can be as aligned as you want to be, and if you don't understand them, then you won't achieve the kind of growth you could. Doesn't mean you won't achieve growth. You will, but you could achieve better because you're more in alignment with them. That being all said, you and I talk about all the time is your goals and how you incentivize people being in alignment with those things.
Yeah.
So if you're clear about what your if you, whether you were annual goals or quarterly goals or monthly goals or rocks or however you phrase it, whatever structure you use, if your teams are in alignment to the company's rocks for that year and they've internalized those, they have their own, each person has their own, obviously, that boil up into those the way they should. Well, then, and also they're incentivized to achieve those. So it's not just it's a goal, checkbox, here I did it, got it. But they are actually compensated for the achievement of those goals. Well, now you're talking about something, because now you're saying, hey, look, man, I just want you to be awesome at what you do. And what you do and the incremental goals of achievement that you have an impact on the business. And therefore, you're going to get compensated for that because the business is going to grow. That us as the leaders, we've decided this is the way. And we've taken into consideration all the people that work for us and what they do and how they can help achieve that. We've boiled it up as a group. We understand what our goals are. We think this is a great strategy, a great plan. We're compensating everyone to achieve these things. It should push to incremental growth and we talk about the growth engine all the time. It's the name of the show. This is what gets it moving, is everybody takes a step, and every day everybody takes another step. And that's all we're trying to take. I say this all the time. It's about the everyday hustle. Every day you just want to get up and take one step. That's it. Like it's the perfect analogy to how this thing can work. I'm in alignment. Everybody's on the same page. I understand who we are. Everybody else understands who we are and how they impact the business. Now we can take a step forward and move this thing. And soon walk becomes run. It's just the way it works.
And what you just described is why in the first couple of meetings that I have with a business owner, when we're talking about scaling and growing their business, why this is in play. We usually have this workshop early so that when the leadership team gets together, we're all looking at this thing from that point forward. And our conversations are all centered around improving this thing with the rest of the building blocks that we create to move the company forward. So it's highly important to get this articulated, diagrammed out quickly, and moving forward. The question I get on this, and we'll wrap this up as quickly as possible here. The question I get on this is, how many steps are there in a core process? There is no right or wrong answer to that. There's only what you like and don't like. I like between 4 and 7 steps with any process. And then if it's more than that, you probably need to maybe just, try to consolidate and move them under, just because it's hard to grasp, to remember, to, and to communicate more steps than that.
Yep.
And it means also you're probably too detailed. Leave that detail back for those individual processes you're going to create. It's usually in the first year after we create a core process, there's somewhere 10 or less processes that branch off from this into different departments and areas, right?
Yep.
In year 2, it looks somewhere between 15 and 20 processes are total created in the company. And it climbs up 5 to 10 processes every year. I have seen companies that have over 100 processes because the company's big enough. Yeah. I like having no more than 50. I like keeping it 20 to 30 processes, because sometimes you can over process your business and people just hate it. Yep. Yeah. So our goal isn't robots here, but it is good to be able to use those processes as documentation for training and onboarding people in their positions and roles. But main processes it takes to run that engine is usually 20 or less to run the engine good.
Because you think about it, like at the tip top level, sales process, marketing process, operations process, right? Those there's a lot that goes underneath those, obviously, right? Like reaching customers where they live is what you do as a marketer, but how you do it, where that is, what you do, how you serve them, how frequently you do all those things, those can each be positional type processes that don't need to boil up. It's essentially, serve customers. Operations, depending on your type of company, giant thing, potentially, commercial building, right? Like that could be a massive exercise just for the part of build something, which can be really simplified at the very tip top core process. But you don't have to define that there. You can push that into their organization and help their teams define their own processes and how they serve the greater process of build something. And so that's a great analogy, because that's a group where there could be a tremendous amount of people and work and layers and processes that go with those things based on the individual types of roles that you might have. Just that's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we beat it down. I think we got the
Good
point
topic.
across on this one. But
Yep.
if you're challenged with creating a core process or need examples, always reach out to me. Comment below, and any ideas you have for our show, any questions you have that you would like to have us discuss, let us know. And
Yeah.
that's it for this week. Trice.
Love it. Thanks, buddy.
All right. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Take care.